I know I'm muted. I'm just doing hand
No,
signs.
you
Hello,
are.
hello.
No, it was me.
Matt.
I was muted as well. And thanks.
No problem. How are you?
Is this our new PLC handshake, the moose? No, the first image I got was like a fluffy sofa, grey sofa material. So I wasn't sure whether I got on the Zoom as well. So, but realised it's yeah. So how is everyone? Good? We're all good?
Good. Yep.
We got, it's, there's, I mean, again, it's, you know, I'm there thinking, oh, what am I going to talk about? And then blah, all this stuff comes out. And somehow I've got to formulate that into some sense for you lot, basically, because there's always something to talk about every week. I mean, I could talk about the budget and all that rubbish, but I kind of have this policy where we don't really talk about religion or politics. And I think that's wise because everyone's got a view on that. But it's very divisive, and it's not telling people that they can't be religious or political. It's just, you know, keep it to themselves, because you know, your own view is your own view, sort of thing, and that's fine to have that. But it's where, you know, those two things, politics and religion, are very divisive, and it's not saying, you know, if you want to be political, then fine, that's your choice. And if you want to be religious, that's fine too. That's your choice. You don't have to be religious or political to be a good person, do you? So it's as simple as that, really. And also part of PLC is that we talk about unity consciousness, which is the things that unite us. You know, we've all got passions, we've all got interests, we've all got topics that get us fired up, or things that we want to change in our lives, you know, and we've all got kind of friends, and you know, we all kind of generally want to get along and live in peace next to each other. And actually this is quite interesting, because I recognize patterns, and I'm recognizing that the kind of the age of the guru and the spiritual hustler have gone, they've passed, you know. People are kind of wised up to the guru who's giving kind of general good advice, but then specifically about things like always doing good. You know, that's subjective, and you could harm someone if you're not conscious of your choices, etc. And gurus some gurus give, you know, bad advice and stuff, and in some ways that's ego. You know, if someone is painting themselves as a guru, they are perhaps thinking that they have done their learning. You know, it's a constant journey until we pass away, really. So I kind of think that society's kind of moved on from that sort of guru kind of Beatles influence, that sort of esoteric spiritual kind of teachings. It's moving on to more sober spirituality and more kind of real life things that you can actuate change with, rather than these hypothetical, mysterious sort of things that you can never attain. So, you know, a lot of this new, I don't know, influencers or people with these new frequencies that are coming out with all this information about how to negotiate life in a loving, kind way, to be at peace with yourself and others and stuff. People like that they don't want to be known as a guru. They don't want to be known as a sort of spiritual soul coach or things like that. They just want to be known as maybe someone who's experienced a bit more life and kind of wants to share some of that wisdom, but is also learning themselves, you know, and they are humble in themselves that they are still learning and fallible as well. So I think kind of a lot of the way things are going is more of a grown-up form of spirituality, more of a grown-up kind of way of holistic life, more practical and pragmatic, really, less kind of like airy-fairy, and more, right, what can we do with the technology and the sort of society that we've got? So, you know, at the PLC are in that space. We are saying, hey, look, we can do things differently. Hey, we've got a working model. Hey, we've got people who've got their hearts and minds and souls invested in it, and it's real lives, and it's making real changes to their lives. So, you know, it's great to be on that leading edge with all of you guys and all of your input, and creating that wave of progressive change that's a bit more kind of grown up and a bit more kind of pragmatic to people's lives and to actually making a difference. So I just kind of want to celebrate you again for that sort of thing, but also I'm kind of just noticing the change in climate. Things are kind of evolving on now, and a lot more of the population are wiser to these kind of nefarious agendas that are going on, which leads me nicely on to this subject, which is basically rejecting the playbook. In order to know the playbook, in order to reject it, you've kind of got to know it. Now, there's some things that I can understand people will find hard to swallow or accept, and that's fine. I'm not trying to convince anyone or, you know, persuade anyone. If it resonates with you, fine, but if it doesn't, then fine too. But I kind of want to describe a deeper level of the playbook that's going on at the moment. Obviously, there's a depopulation event. There's the jabs that are still rolling out in some places and people getting ill. There's obviously the pushback from that, where people are being injured and people are trying to get justice and stuff like that. And we just had the inquiry that was a big cover up. Again, I'm trying to steer away from politics, although, you know, our society and everything does include it. So I'm just trying to include it in the round, in general terms, in some ways. But essentially, what we're up against is, if you've been following in America in the Senate hearings to do with secret military compartmentalized black projects and the secret industrial military complex and aerospace contractors and businesses, they've all been basically cajoling for technologies that have been found and recovered and retrieved from around the planet. That's advanced technologies from non-human entities. They've been doing this since the medieval times, basically. So governments, to certain levels, know about all these ETs. They know, they've interacted with them, they've crashed, they've picked up beings, they've interviewed them, they've incarcerated them, they've tested them, cut them up, all these sorts of things. But essentially, it's what I'm trying to paint here is a deeper level. Planet Earth has been visited by by positive and regressive species. Some of those regressive species have hybridized humans, so you wouldn't know that they're regressive. You would think it's a human. And that's basically how an intelligent species can take over a planet. It can breed its own version of that species and then bathe that bred version with its own frequencies, with its own culture, with its own psychology, with its own hypnosis. And effectively, you can create a similar species that looks exactly the same as the original, but its whole psychology will be geared up to its masters. So we've been having this for thousands of years, basically, since the Anunnaki left. Right? They didn't do any hybridizations of humans. They were just doing that with other genetics. And so it's a myth that they created humans for gold mining. The real hidden knowledge is that humans have arrived here a long time ago in various ways, voluntarily and sometimes not. But progressively, these negative species have taken over control of the planet, and they've infiltrated all these societies. If you think back in history, just from the history that we're told, you can trace politics back to, before that it was kings and royalty, and before that, well, at that time it was kind of the church and religion. So you've got the Vatican that is sitting on top of lots of hidden knowledge about all the extraterrestrials, has been infiltrated by them. That's the old Roman, you know, empire, just converted into a religion. Then they infiltrated all these societies with these regressive beings, and then basically they've controlled humanity ever since. So it's through every strata that humanity has been infiltrated with these hybrids, and under the control of these hidden hands, if you like. Because if you're an intelligent species, superior than the one that you're controlling, you will be invisible. That's part of the art of war. You don't know who the enemy is. It's to attack, you know. So infiltrating societies secretly, without being on the surface or without being known visibly, you know, or seen or identified, is how these guys have been taking over the, you know, and infiltrating through threats of death or whatever, you know. So humanity is being controlled basically by regressive species. Now, either you accept that or you don't. You know, all the stuff coming out in America and the hearings says they've got biologics, they've got retrieved craft and technologies. These are from the people in the programs. So it's up to you to decide. You know, one of the hardest things for me is knowing that regressives have taken control of the planet, and basically most of the population doesn't even know that ETs exist. So we've got a big leap to go with that one. But eventually, you know, we will find out that they are very real, and like there's more life out there, good and bad and neutral, just as much as there's good and bad and neutral humans. So it's dealing with that basically. And so you can see the tentacles, so stretching out from the church, stretching into the royals, getting, you know, religious backing from all the cardinals, the royals then allowing politics into play into their societies. They're just, each one of those is a psyop, is a controlled population control trick, is a population control game. You know, these are entities like parliaments, you know. The whole system is a playhouse designed to manipulate those, the ones under the controllers, so who are invisible. Anyway, so with that said, I want to kind of explain part of the depopulation agenda is on so many different levels. For example, I know someone who's the last person in their property, and the government want to get them out because they're on welfare. And suddenly they're now sending that person, why don't you get your flu jab? Why don't you, you know? So the government works in conjunction with the NHS and your doctors basically to put you on a pathway. They can change your parents' medications without your consent. You know, they say kneel by mouth and starve them in hospitals. They reduce the amount of salt, things like that. You know, so unbeknownst to you, there are all these different pathways in which the government can control your life and can control, you know, whether you live or die, basically. So thankfully, I said to them, don't you dare get that flu shot, because that will finish you off. You're pretty much pushing it already. So, and you know, isn't that convenient? You're the last person that they have to find accommodation for. Yeah, they've moved everyone else out of that property except you, and now suddenly they're asking you to, and your doctor's saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's a great idea to get a shot." So, you know, there are these little subtle pathways going through society. You know, it starts off at birth, basically, all that indoctrination. But then as a kid is growing up, you know, they've had all those jabs and toxins and stuff. They've had all the programming and indoctrination from school and their parents. But then they go into adolescence and they start eating all the toxins and sweets and colorings and, you know, all those kind of E numbers and all those aspartame, which actually is makes people infertile, and things like that. So they become poisoned with fast food and you know, crap, basically processed chemicals in pretty packaging. And then you've got society, then media and social media taking over from there. You know, they've stopped. Part of this depopulation thing is not a depopulation event. People have got to realize it's actually rolling depopulation now. So it's like, if you can isolate the child from their parents' knowledge and wisdom and their grandparents' knowledge and wisdom, and teach the child to reject that and think it's alien and think it's wrong, then you've got a mind that's growing up that you've captured basically, and that you can train in society to absorb whatever matrix frequencies it's swimming in, and then it becomes a product of the matrix, another mind slave, another joule of energy that's funding all these or fueling all these systems. So we're under all these kind of different agendas. I know it's kind of negative, but to be aware of something is being more protective, and it's risk assessment rather than fear. It's just recognizing patterns and the deeper patterns that most people don't know. So really, I kind of wanted to get to the point where, you know, there are all these sort of hidden controllers. There's a rolling depopulation. You know, they'd had things like the Spanish flu to get rid of the soldiers in the First World War, because they would tell the truth about, you know, both sides working for the same organization, or mismanagement of, you know, loss of human lives and atrocities, etc., etc., etc. They're doing the same with the Gulf War, you know, with all the Gulf War syndrome and things like that. So it's a way in which it's a sort of form of attrition. If you can kind of work out pathways in which someone takes and then they have a shorter life, say joining the military, they're more likely to die in combat. Say, you know, if they are completely into politics and they're completely hypnotized into thinking that they're doing something good for society, but actually a minion working for the corrupt above them and stuff. So there's all these different things. You know, we've got antitrust. You know, the government's now saying they can't trust everyone and you have to be verified every time. Well, you know, what about us not trusting the government, for example? You know, they've broken our trust many times. Where's the verified tick to say, well, no, thank you to the government, you know, for our purposes, for our safety and security. And then, of course, there's copyright. You know, all these AI things, they've messed around with artists' copyright so that they can nick people's ideas and then claim, because it's gone through the AI, that it was their intellectual property. So this is like harvesting the human mind for its new ideas and new concepts, because AI has no heart and soul. It can't generate anything new. It needs that human, random, creative input, you know, to come up with something new. Otherwise, it's just regurgitating what's already out there. So it does need that human input. But again, it's harvesting the minds of that human input, that creative force that's from source. Oh, that rhymes. So I'm just saying, you know, there's all these different ways in which we're being harvested, and, you know, death of 1,000 cuts, but that's their playbook. We do not have to play that game. We can play our own game, which I much prefer. You know, so for example, okay, I've written out a few little pointers, and there's a document that's attached to this core, and we'll put on the main hub as well. So, you know, they want to shepherd us all into corporations. They want us buying from the supermarkets and not going to independent shops and, say, butchers or bakers or candlestick makers or whatever. They want us all buying the sort of rapeseed, you know, processed food and expensive meats and, you know, expensive health foods and everything else cheap and poisoning us, basically. So they're trying, what they're doing is currently they're trying to shut down the economy, so that all the independent businesses close down and only corporations are existing. So they're the only kind of places that the public can go to. And then therefore you've got them all controlled. If there's no private or family or independent businesses, they've all got to be controlled in some way as corporations. So the corporations are trying to shut down independent businesses. They're trying to shut down cash, which is your independent choice, because there's no middleman. And they're trying to take away your privacy and your trust. You know, they don't trust you. So really, you know, this is a complete breakdown of governments around the world. You know, their corruption is now spinning up and catching up on themselves. And everyone's starting to see all this corruption in these different governments. So what can you do to kind of build resources, to build resilience, to stand firm in your truth, to live the life that you want to, and not be put upon by these entities, because it's not one person, it's a whole group of entities that are creating laws and rules to control you. So what can you do to break that, to stop that feeding that energy and that entity? Well, you can first of all you know, don't trust a politician. If they open their mouths, they're lying. Trust yourself. Trust your own judgments. Tune up your discernment, you know. Trust whether something is instinctively right or it feels off, you know. Trust your judgment about people. You know, what they do is more important than what they say. But also trust local people that you know, because that's part of starting to build a community around you, your local people. If you know someone regularly in the neighborhood and you know what they do and they seem like a conscientious person, you know, have a conversation with them, you know, get together and start organizing, you know, feel them out first, obviously. So don't trust the politicians, don't trust the media, don't trust the experts, don't trust the science. You know, it's all, you know, if it's on social media, basically, there's going to be 80% lies and 20% truth generally, or flip to the other way around for certain things. So yeah, trust yourselves. Don't trust these fake people and politicians after your money and your beliefs. And trust locals that you know and get to know well. That's one of the first things you can do. So that's switching your allegiance or your loyalty to real people, not these fake important people on the telly. You don't know them. You don't know their background. You don't know what they've been up to. They've obviously, to get there, you have to be compromised in some way. So second one is turn and produce. Turn your hand to things. Everyone can make something. Everyone, whether that's you know, whether you're a writer, you're an artist, you're a crafter, you're a grower, you're a systems manager, you know, everyone can create something that they can then sell and earn from. So have a think about kind of how you can, you know, you've got loads of shopping and resources going through every day. You have to eat 3 meals a day. You have to go to the shops to buy food that they're in containers. You've got vegetable peelings. You've got, you know, all these kind of things going through you every day, all these resources. And you can peel some of them away and keep them and say, you know, make your own jam from the jam jars that you buy in the shops, or make your own produce, or, you know, make cakes and sell them at a jumble, etc., etc. An extra income. These are forms in which you can create an extra income for yourself, income streams, so that helps to alleviate debt, because debt is one of those tools that they use to enslave people. So if you can bring in some revenue streams, if you like, that may ease the burden of your debt. But also you can write off debts by going to a debt agency as well. If you cannot do that, you can say bankruptcy or insolvency, and they'll write off about 80% of your debt. So have a look at that as well. If debt is one of those things that's enslaving you. Yeah. So, and then you know, sell your products. If you organise with people that you meet locally, you know, you can make jumble sales and make money from that. You could have food markets and people get to know your speciality meal or your speciality thing. You know, I know a shop that does speciality pies, and people come from miles away to get to those pies. So you never know, you might be a genius at what you do and make more money for yourself in the process. You can hold well-being events. You can help people out with your knowledge and wisdom. You can hold community gatherings as well, and food events where you can all have a big meal like they do abroad. You know, you can have all sorts of ways to gather with nice people and create more structure for your local community and yourself, and more resilience and stuff. Then of course self-sufficiency, that's what I'm saying, you know, become your own entrepreneur if you can, because then you're less reliant on the state and you're less dependent on them telling you what to do. And then disconnect, you know, have a look at the contracts that you've currently got. You know, are they serving you? There are a lot of financial instruments, banks are changing the policies practically every week, it seems, you know, as to whether they, you know, want to up the percent of money that they're charging, or whatever it is, policies, etc. So really, if you can become self-sufficient, and, you know, build up collective resourcefulness with other people, because you're all working together, you know, I'll make some produce here and that person wants to buy my produce, but equally I like the produce they're making, so I'm going to buy their produce. And you feed each other that way. You don't feed the cabal. You feed lovely independent people and see their lives flourishing, and they do the same for you. So ultimately, you know, being happy is not about more. It's actually about less. Happy people work smart. They're not lazy. You know, they work better for their time and they do less. It's actually, you find that you're happier with less demands on your system, less demands from other people, less, you know, strains on your system. So if you can do less, you're actually still making progress. But if you can work smarter by doing less, you will actually be happier, because life is, you know, the simplicity of life is the beauty of it, really. Not more and more endless choice, you know, not more and more endless kind of fluff and noise, you know, and fakeness. Real people, real lives, you know, real environments. That's what's intrinsically real. So yeah, return to that kind of natural human being where you're actually speaking to people on a real one-to-one level, and you're actually creating events that people are like to come to and enjoy, sort of thing, and sharing that wealth, you know, with each other, sort of thing. So now I'm going to bring in this analogy. Okay, so in the document I've got like this, which is, you are the sum of your thoughts, your habits, your beliefs, your actions, and your words. That's your sum total of who you are. Okay, now those bring in frequencies and creates the reality that you see around you. But it also creates you. You are that person. You're the sum of all those influences and all the things that you've rejected as well. But we're like sponges. If, you know, we're born into the matrix land, which is like a big sheep dip. Yeah, and as soon as you're born, you're plunged into that sheep dip. That's all you know. You know just the sheep dip, which is the matrix land. You know, you don't know that there's anything beyond that, just what you're taught kind of thing. You think, oh, well, that's reality then. That's how it goes. But actually, the more you kind of explore that sheep dip, the more you find that there's edges to it and you can climb out of it. And then there's a whole clean ocean of amazing things outside of that. But you wouldn't know until you climb outside of that. So I've got now an analogy here, which is basically a caterpillar, a mosquito larvae, and a baby duck. So what do they all have in common? Well, it's a bit like enlightenment. Okay, so I've done a sketch at the bottom. A caterpillar doesn't know it's going to be a butterfly. It has no idea of its future self. It doesn't know that it's going to have wings and it's got a whole different mode of transport. Yeah, the caterpillar at some point gets fat enough so that it can't grow any fatter. It's just reached its stage where it's like, yeah, I'm done with the eating leaves thing. My body's like full. I guess I've got to do something else now. And instinctively, it goes into its cocoon, transforms into a beautiful butterfly. But it's got no clue of that future self. And it's the same for the mosquito larvae. Mosquito larvae knows the underwater pond, knows everything about the underwater. It's a predator, but it doesn't know that it can fly until it gets above and breaks the water, the surface of the water. And then it becomes transformed into this deadly killer with a you know, deadly proboscis and annoying and stuff. So it doesn't know that until it breaks that surface. So like the caterpillar doesn't know its future butterfly until it changes and transforms. So, and these things happen naturally with them, but also they happen naturally with us. It's only because we're in this artificial sheep dip that's kind of been stunted and held back from us. Because actually, trying to describe enlightenment is an interesting one, because if you're trying to describe it to people who are in the matrix, in the 3D, then it doesn't exist. It can't exist. You can't be saying you are enlightened, because if you say you're enlightened, that means you're not, because it means you're an ego and you're arrogant, right? So trying to explain, you know, you're a butterfly to a caterpillar that's still in the fog, still munching on the leaves. You know, they haven't found themselves yet. They're still finding their way around. In the drawing, I've got like a pit of despair. You know, that's basically when you reach the dark valley of your soul and you fall down and stumble and you suffer and you reach the bottom of the barrel and you realize that you've got nowhere else to go other than rewrite who you are, because obviously that previous version has led you to despair or the bottom of the barrel kind of thing, or the need to change something. And so people who get to that pit of despair, the valley, dark night of the soul, or that kind of self-realization, oh my God, I'm in a society that's lied to me and it's fake and all these kind of agendas going on. They kind of start to rewrite who they are. They say, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to rewrite my life, my reality, the way that I want to. And they start climbing that ladder. They start ascending with more and more knowledge and research and finding the truth, even though it's difficult to swallow and stuff like that. But eventually they get above this fog that everyone underneath cannot see, you know, and they realize that they are in a world that's got a greater perspective, a greater perception of reality. Some of them may not think that they're enlightened or ascended, but actually they're just wiser. They're self-aware, they're wiser, they're conscientious, they're loving, they are interested in learning, they're interested in unity, they're interested in sharing. You know, all those sort of transformations happen from coming out of that toxic society and traveling above that fog. So explaining that you've made all that legwork, you've done all that inner work, you've had all those experiences, you've come to all those conclusions, those very specific ones to do with your experiences in life. People, you can't convey that to a normal 3D mind slave. You know, they've got no conception of that breadth and width of reality and all those variables that you've experienced. So people can become enlightened, can become ascended, can become wise, and can become self-aware, can become more conscientious, and can become at peace with themselves. That's essentially the new sexy. That's the new form of spirituality. Forget all the kind of trappings. If you can find your inner peace, then you've arrived. You know, if nothing external bothers you, then basically you've arrived at contentment. You've arrived at ascension. You've arrived at inner peace. And, you know, often it takes trauma for people to reach the pit and then find that ladder out of the fog. And that's really what PLC, you know, we want to do. We want to give people a hand up and tools and information and data, but not only just the kind of black and white paper, you know, letters and words and numbers, but actual people behind them, real people, living real lives of change and making a difference. So that's my analogy about us. You know, the more that we're entangled in the matrix and the 3D world, in the debt, in the enslavement tools, and the agendas and the beliefs, the more we are absorbed by the matrix. We are a jewel of that energy fueling that system in the matrix, you know, unawares. So the more that you can work on yourself and change within, like the caterpillar or like the mosquito larvae, the more you break that surface and realize, oh my goodness, there's a whole wealth of abundance past this nonsense. And there are other people there to help support me to climb that ladder. And then so instead of being the duck that's, you know, born and sees the mum as the imprint, the matrix mum as the imprint, and then does all matrixy things, you know, you could change your script and basically realize that you are the one that can action that change from within like a butterfly. You are the one that can rewrite your beliefs as who the authority is, i.e. yourself, trust yourself, and local people that you know and can discern are honest. Then you can start making all those different changes. You can stop feeding those little corporations. You can stop viewing false authority as, you know, to rule over you. You can start making your independent choices and connect with people and build local communities or local friendships to start with, not even local communities, just local friendships and then that can build into a community group. So there's all these different ways in which you can cut those energy cords to the matrix. You can take control of your life more. You can action that change. You can identify what you want to do and what you want to remove. You can, but you are the butterfly. You are, waiting to come out. So, have a look at if you want to change, fine. If you want to carry on in the matrix and you want to be governed and ruled and told what to do and be in debt and then say, carry on. By all means, I'm going to watch that crumble and fall apart while I'm here with my mates creating a loving community worldwide. So, we're coming up to, in February, it will be I think it's our second year, is it, Jane?
I think
Third
you'll
year?
find it's
Second year?
3.
Third year, yeah. It's going by so quickly. It's amazing. And we've had our own trials and tribulations, but we're still here. we're still loving, and we're still bringing out all this new information, maybe to you, maybe not to other people, of ways in which you can kind of gain control and reject all those kind of slavery things, and be your own boss and create your own reality that doesn't, the matrix one doesn't even figure in. So that's really what we're about at PLC. We're here to unite under a common theme, which is, heart-based, being loving, kind, sharing, building resilience, helping others, and helping ourselves in the process. So that's my little piece for today. The last bit was, part of that is coming out of binary thinking. There's always a third option, the neutral one. Remember that. And actually, the neutral space is the strongest because you're controlling the dark and the light, the positive and the negative. You're keeping an eye on both, but you're not entangling in either. And so that was the diagram. It was to just emphasize that you can come out of duality, come out of binary thinking. And that's also transforming yourself from within, because if you always think that there's a third option, then it's that third option may be the one that you're creating, that you're making, that can get you out of the two dead options, two dead ends. If you create your own third option, you can find your way and be your own creator of your reality, rather than being in this binary world of, I have to choose this or that. So that kind of mindset shift is part of that caterpillar transforming from within sort of thing. So yeah, I'm going to have a slurp of my tea now. Yes.
Okay,
Shraddha.
so I have a question and a comment. I'll start with a comment. I like your practical definition of enlightenment. If you define enlightenment as light is knowledge, the more knowledge, wisdom, and experience you have, the more perspective you have, that is what enlightenment is. Because when people talk about it, it can sound like this magical experience that is unattainable. So that's cool. And second, my question is about the Anunnaki, because many different people will comment or refer to the Anunnaki. And my understanding is is it either a specific race, or is it a generic definition for any ET race? When you talk about Anunnaki, which
so
mean?
the Anunnaki, or Anunnaki, which is the original pronunciation of them, they are Lyrians, they're humans like us. So the notion of them creating humans is silly, because if you look at the sculptures and statues of them, they're humans already. So why would they want to create more humans out of that? Plus, when you know that Star Family have technologies to have seeded us here, at least possibly 2 million years ago, they had 0-point energy, and they had, gold circuitry, and they had technologies and craft that can traverse interstellar distances. They could melt stone, and they had lasers back then. So they've no need to mine Earth for gold. Obviously, any ET species coming here and setting up colony will need resources, and will mine those anyway. Just but not specifically to, seed their planet's atmosphere or to, harvest gold for, so that's another myth. The Anunnaki, basically, they were one of the kind of advanced human races that arrived here and set up colonies in Sumer and brought agriculture and hydraulics and landscaping and all that sort of knowledge from their culture. So, but they had to leave because the regressives were hybridizing humans, and they just couldn't handle it, the volume. So they asked another group to come in and take over, which have done a pretty good job, I must say. So, and those are the Charistas. So, and so we've got, the situation here is that people don't understand that, like I said, you can get humans that look human, but their psychology is ET, and you get humans that are hybrids, and their psychology, they're working for their masters. But you wouldn't know. They'd walk past you in the street and you just think that they're humans. So people haven't quite grasped the fact that an intelligent regressive species can hybridize the one that they want to control and then use those hybrids to infiltrate and control. And that's basically what we've been under. And that's what eventually will come out. All these governments, all these psyops about, they're trying to direct the information coming out of America by trying to say, oh, we're doing our best. We were in national security and all this. But ultimately it'll come out that the government didn't have control on the secret military projects and the secret intelligence agencies and the aerospace industry, and they recovered technologies that gave advances over other countries and stuff like that. And it's all about military weapons and being more superior than the other countries, which is also a bit of a psyop, because when you realize that one or three kind of regressive species are kind of controlling the planet, you realize that actually they're pretending, the one on a surface level, they're pretending not to know these things exist. And we do have aliens, we do have crash craft, I never knew. But they've been recovering them since the medieval times. So that's just the surface level for the population. And part of that psyop is like saying, oh yeah, now we've got biologics. Yeah, now we've got craft. Oh yeah, we're going to disclose them and stuff like that. Oh, nothing nefarious is going on. We haven't had any contracts that allow people to be abducted off the planet. And no, don't look that way. We're good guys, kind of thing. So we've got all that going on at the moment. Sorry to digress a bit. But, the Anunnaki basically were Illyrian humans, and some of them were Pleiadians. But essentially, they were a race because they were a certain type of genetics from their planet Nibiru. So that has certain dynamics. They were slightly bigger. They're about 8 foot tall, not as big as the ones that you get with the sculptures with the lions. That's to just represent their power. They were actually taller humans by 8 to 10 foot. They were. And of course they brought the knowledge, like a lot of these ancient monoliths and carvings and symbols. They too had the pine cone, which represents the pineal gland, inner sight, insight, and they had the handbags, which are seeds of knowledge, which represents wisdom. They are a race, ET race, that brought wisdom and knowledge to Earth, along with that shared knowledge from other races as well, because you'll see the Maya have the handbags, in Japan they have the handbags, in Europe, in Malta, in Göbekli Tepe, even in Easter Island they have the handbags. Now that represents that wisdom, that these beings from the sky or from space brought with them wisdom. They were wise, benevolent cultures. So that's why they share the handbags and things like that. So yeah, that was. I hope that answers.
No, it did. So it's a human Lyrian race, taller.
Yeah.
They left, passed on that role to other Lyrian
Yes.
that
We
were
do
living?
have
Okay.
some Anunnaki representatives that are on the planet still. So there's just a few, but they're kind of keeping an eye and sending the info back home, if you back to their home, sort of thing. So we do have a few on the planet still, but the whole society, the whole culture's gone now. Like the Mayans decided to do the same.
Okay. Thank you. That was helpful.
Jane, did you have something to say?
Yes, I wanted to welcome Morven, as
Oh
our
yes.
new member to PLC. Lovely to see you on the call.
Sorry. Yes. Hi, Morgan.
Morven, Morven,
Morven.
Morven.
Yes. Morven's. Yes.
You dove right into the deep end of Fringe PLC. I love it.
Well, Morven's lovely. She's uh, I, I've spoken to Morven for a while and
Oh,
gained some amazing insights and stuff to do with spirit and to do with all sorts of energies and things like that. So it's an absolute joy to have you on the call. And like us, not your average run-of-the-mill person in the matrix doing boring beige kind of things and mundane stuff. So we like that. We like people who are their own minds and doing their own things. So that's good. So how are we doing for time?
it's just gone 9:15. So,
Did anyone want to kind of speak about anything specific, or they've got a burning issue, or
no, I
well,
have a gathering coming up on Sunday.
is that
So
PLC
finding
Helston?
out the PLC Helston gathering. Demelza has been and done Clive Edwards' course. He's the one that he's a builder who's been getting planning, not just building without planning permission, and has discovered how to do it. So she did his course last weekend. So she's going to come back and tell us all about it. Sounds interesting. Very much on the same lines as the Sovereign Project, but with variations on the theme.
Oh, I'd like to hear about
So,
that. If you
yeah.
want to put something together, and then talk about that, that would be lovely. Because
Yeah. Okay.
it's always nice to know what other groups are doing. We've actually got to catch up with the People's Health Alliance soon as well, and see how they're doing.
See how
Because
they're
that's all
doing.
part of the
Yeah.
networking, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So, yeah. And I can see Marilyn is here. Marilyn Smith. I don't know whether you're on the call or whether she's in England or New Zealand. Where are you, Marilyn?
Hello there, Jane. Nice to see your face again.
Hiya.
Can you? Hey, I'm actually back in New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes, sudden move back to the south.
Right.
Yes, so many interesting things happening now. But talking about the PHA, I've now joined the PHA over here in New
Yay.
Zealand. They're doing some really good stuff. So I'm working at their local hub, which they have once a week, and they have all sorts of different alternate practitioners. So I'm doing reflexology and Rife treatments. Yeah, so that there is a movement over here, but it's still very small, unfortunately, and still lots of people unaware of what's going on. So trying to start some awkward conversations with people without upsetting them too much or over dramatizing things. But yes, it's difficult to know how to approach the subject of what's happened over the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
I tend to
Yeah,
explain it from my own perspective, from my own experiences, because if someone can see that you've lived through that, that you're not making things like that up because you're talking on that level of detail, and then they can see that you've kind of overcome that, then that's more real rather than the sort of hypotheticals. Do you know what I mean? And so if you would say if someone said to you, I'm suffering, for example, on X, Y, and Z, you could say, oh, I completely understand because I went through that a while ago, or, you know, something similar. And then
Yes.
you can explain it from that human level of well, this is how I got out of that, which is more, which is not, you know, because the other way, the shoulda, coulda, woulda is like patronizing in a way, and
Yes.
people kind of get put off by that.
Yeah.
So maybe just explain it from your own personal human level, and
Mm.
then I think people will click a lot easier with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just get the sense that people over here want to forget and move on, which I can't do. I need some accountability. Um, I want to see the truth coming out, and that's just not happening, unfortunately. And the longer it
No,
goes on, the less likely that is to happen, I think.
yeah, part of being enlightened is knowing that there's certain things that aren't going to happen, which is quite interesting. Not very
Hmm.
nice either. Like
No.
knowing not everyone's going to wake up, like knowing, you know, that you've got a greater view of perception of reality that others can't understand, um, and knowing that discernment of who to, you know, who's receptive to your information and who's not as
Mm.
well. Yeah, it's tricky because I think we would all like accountability. You know, my friend Steve and AJ have been doing this cease and desist orders to the police and all the documents, and they've all rejected that. And it will be the
Yeah.
same in your country as well because they're all,
Mm.
you know. So really, I channel my anger and outrage into
Hmm.
things like PLC. I'm like, right, well, I'm not putting up. I'm going to make that system obsolete. I'm
Hmm.
going to, you know, have a worldwide community of people who are just, that reality is not in theirs. It's just a, you know, that's for matrix slave people, and that's just going
Yes.
to dissolve. Less and less people will feel that.
Mm.
So, so it is
Mm.
a tricky one because everyone, in a way, it's a bit like that transformative process. You know, you've done most of that legwork already, but there are lots of people further back down the line who are still processing, and it's gauging where their levels of consciousness are, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It tends to be though that if someone's suffering, it doesn't matter what level of consciousness they're at, they'll generally want to change. You know, if they want change enough, they will change internally.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's getting those people who genuinely, because a lot of people will say I want to change and then not put in the effort.
Mhm.
So, but I think you'll probably have the discernment because you've done all, you know, the legwork as well, and you've
Yeah.
got those
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah, no, great.
what concerns me is the general health of everyone over here, and it's probably the same in the UK. The doctors are so swamped, and they're not really asking the question, well, why is this? Yeah, I mean, at the moment, you cannot get a doctor's appointment anywhere, which is why a lot of people are coming to the PHA hub. Um, yeah, and the whole health system is just totally overwhelmed and
By
apparently
design.
puzzled as to what's happening,
Yeah.
rather than looking at the truth of what's happened. Yes, it's got a bit like swimming through mud for a lot of these people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm
interesting times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that between all of us, you know, we've created that sacred space of the PLC, so people
Yes.
can land there now, and like with Catherine and Lisa and Amanda and all that, those people at PHA,
Mm.
you know, they've created those sacred spaces for people to land in now,
Mm.
and hopefully, you know, those spaces will expand out more as more and more people get to know them, and they
Yes.
will then have more and more structure in them, you know, more services provided and stuff. So
Mm.
we've now got these spaces, whereas before, when all this sort of kicked off in 2021, there weren't any community spaces, and it's a joy to create those little mini environments all around the world that people can seek a bit of sanctuary and actual truths, even if they're hard truths. But you know,
Yes.
people with that wisdom and experience. So yeah,
Mm.
well, good, you know, anything we can do to assist you over there with PHA or on any kind of holistic level, then do let us know.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to see you all again. It really is. And strange to think that you're all preparing for the festive season and it's cold over there. Of course, over here, we're heading into summer and it's hot. Um, and the mozzies have started. So completely different lifestyle.
And I love it as well because actually we've got you in New Zealand, we've got Morven in, I think, St. Lucia, and we've got
Wow.
Shareva in America, and we've got Jane in Cornwall, and me in Dorset. So you know, and I don't know where
Ronnie,
Ronnie's coming
Ronnie.
from, but you know, amazing. Our planet, we're on every part of the planet, so. And
Yes.
I think the more we do this, the more people will catch on. It's not like a big
Yeah.
fanfare or a branded kind of
Mm.
initiative. It's just people changing their lifestyles and
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, it's much better on the other side," kind of thing. So,
Mm.
yeah, long may it
Yeah.
rain.
Yes.
Well, I think that's us. I can't think of anything else to say other than thank you for being on the call. And again, you know, it's lovely to share all this information with everyone and cross-pollinate what you know,
Yeah.
because you're informing me, all of you guys as well. I'm still
Yeah.
learning. So brilliant. And well, I guess we'll see you all next Wednesday for the members call where we'll get into a bit more detail about how we can shake things up and kick some cabals out of the way and live that high vibe life. All right, guys, lots of love and see you next week. Have a good week.
Lots of love. Thanks, Matt.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.